Listen up, Gotham.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hiya, Buttons. It's me, Harley Quinn.
This is Batman.
This is Robin.
Tune into the Bat Fanatic Podcast.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast with Sammy Warm Hands.
With Sammy Warm Hands.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast. Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
Although, Sam, you might think about changing the name.
Hey everybody, it's the Dark Knight of Rap, Sammy Warm Hands, and this is the Bat Fanatic Podcast. This is our first ever video episode. I got my brand new co-hosts in the house. We'll get to that in a moment. First, I got to shout out our season 3. Whoa, it's almost season 4. I'm in the habit of saying the same thing. We're in between seasons, but our sponsor remains TNK Comics and Collectibles. You can follow on shortboxed.com/TNK Comics or on Instagram for claim sales at the Nando Night. That's KNIGHT. And today we are going to do our first of many, hopefully, Comic-Con reviews. This is Fan Expo Portland. All right, so today I've got our new friends who will be with us for the 4th season, both members of the Bat Force. I've got the host of the Everything Batman podcast, Dunk. How's it going?
What up? Everything's all good here.
And I've got the co-host of the Grumps and Gramps, Tons of Laughs with Grumps and Gramps podcast, The Dark Knight of Barbecue.
I've frozen to death.
This is not a Skeletor cosplay. He is actually deceased.
He's trying to stay warm.
Coming to you from the grave.
So I guess on that note, I'll start with Dunk since Gramps passed away, R.I.P. But just to introduce you folks, people who might listen to our show or now be watching it. And so you do, first of all, you're both members of Bat Force Radio, which is, as far as I know, longest running, biggest Batman podcast there is. So, you're slumming it with me today. Thank you. But talk to folks about the Everything Batman podcast. What do you cover on your show?
So my podcast is pretty much an open platform where the majority of people are cosplayers. And similar to what we're doing today, I do reviews from the number of Comic-Cons that I attend.
And I think it's super cool that yours is purely fandom focused because there's lots of different angles, and the most common ones being reviews, like we often do on this show. We've done a couple of bonus episodes where we talk about cons and stuff, and I've been fortunate enough to guest on your show a few times, which has been great. But there's not really a lot about the fandom itself, and so you're kind of like the man on the ground. You're at every show. Like, how many cons did you say you went to last year?
Last year was 12.
12. That's
fucking the connoisseur of conventions.
It's insane. The connoisseur.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. And so you're out there networking, meeting everybody, and bringing on collectors, cosplayers, whatever, to tell their stories, which is super cool. Because a lot of times there's people I've followed for a long time on Instagram, and maybe we interact on there, but I didn't actually know about them. A lot of times we don't even know each other's real names.
Pretty much.
Yeah, Everything Batman podcast, highly recommend. It's also a video show, so you can check that out on the Bat Force YouTube channel. Gramps, you and Grumps have done a figure spinoff where you break down some of your favorites. I actually just watched your recap of 2023 favorites with special guest Teasus. That was super cool. What made you guys want to start doing your own thing as a spinoff of the Bat Force?
Well, first, it's good to be back alive.
Welcome.
Yeah, the Grumps and Gramps show kind of started off as a joke. As far as members of the Bat Force, Grumps and I are pretty much the heavy loaders when it comes to figure collecting. I mean, the other guys collect too. I mean, that's kind of one of the bonding forces of the Bat Force, I guess. Yeah. But he and I would always, in our group chats and stuff, be always talking about these figs, and they were just like, "You guys need to have your own little kind of spin-off show."
Alone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the YouTube channel is kind of like our own network in a way.
Yeah.
We still do our shows with guests where we talk about the books and things of that. Dunk does his Everything Batman, where he's talking with people at conventions, the cosplayers. And we've all found our niche for kind of what we wanted to do in our own little channel on the network, if you want to think of it in that way. And Grumps and Gramps kind of grew out of our love for collecting and discussing and customizing the 1/12 scale action figures. It's been a lot of fun. I think we've done 42 episodes.
Wow.
It's a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun. And 2024 is going to be even better. So if you love Batman content and you love collecting, reach out over there and maybe you can find a home for us too. And
yeah, if you like Batman content, between the three of us, there is a lot.
You're going to get a lot. You're going to get a lot.
You're in the right place.
It's going to be a lot.
I do want to shout out your co-host, Batforce Grumps, because he was like one of the first people when I started my little collection page, Bat Fan Addict. You know, I just was like, I got to stop sharing all this nerdy shit on my music page. People are going to unfollow me if they want to watch my music videos or tour dates. And then I'm constantly posting this animated series toys and shit. And so I started my own page, and he was one of the first people who, was really supportive and reposting my stuff. And, that was like 5-6 years ago, and he still does to this day. And so, yeah, I mean, he was my first introduction to any of you guys in the broader community. So, yeah, I really appreciate that, dude.
Yep. We love Grumps. He puts on this facade that he's a big, bad, tough New Yorker guy, but he's a big teddy bear.
I would think of him as the essential hater with that kind of name. And occasionally he'll weigh in with the unpopular opinion, but for the most part, he's like the sweetest dude and the most supportive. So, definitely right about that.
Love you, Grumps.
Now, today's episode, like I said, will be the first of hopefully many as we visit various conventions this year. We've done a couple bonus things where we'll do like an Instagram live and record it, and I drop that on the podcast, but we're going to try to do more proper episodes. And this is our first full video episode ever. And being remote, it allows us to do this. And these two guys are veterans of the video game here. So not video game, but the fucking video pod game. And so they were giving me some tips on how to do this, and we're going to try it out. I've got video to share. I got photos to share from Fan Expo Portland. So bear with me as we roll this out for the first time, but this was my first Fan Expo. Have you guys been to, I know, of course, Dunk has, but have you gone to a bunch of Fan Expo events in your area?
Yeah, Fan Expo is the largest con in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I think they also do Houston, but Dallas used to have its Dallas Comic-Con, but then Fan Expo, developed into the premier company that it is and moved in and started having larger events. And Dallas used to have, its Comic-Con used to be really focused on comics.
Yeah.
But the Fan Expo has expanded that where now they're bringing in celebrity guests and things like that. So that's really overtaken this market. So I usually go to that every year.
That was kind of my first reaction to the guest list is like, okay, it seems like Fan Expo is more of a celebrity con than like it's at the same convention center in Portland, Oregon as Rose City Comic Con, which is a very comic heavy event. And, they're only a few months apart. And so it was kind of a trip going there, the same place, and having like kind of a totally different vibe. Dunk, what was your, what was your introduction to them? Do you remember?
MegaCon last year. Was it last year? Well,
that was your first one?
2 years now.
Wow.
And that was like pretty much the beginning of me putting, the miles in the aisles.
Yeah.
And just going to all these cons. And that was pretty much also the beginning of the podcast.
Right. Yeah.
I love Fan Expos. They really capture multiple avenues of like fandom when it comes to artists, actors, and such.
Yeah.
I always enjoy them. I'm a bigger fan of like an actual con, like comic book related and like artists and stuff, but not to knock Fan Expo, but
no, I mean, I think they have
be overwhelming.
A great bench of talent. I think this one, not being one of the huge ones, reminded me a bit of like GalaxyCon Austin. I went there for the first time in September, and similar size and also seemed to be more celebrity leaning, but also like they have so many events back to back because there was Fan Expo New Orleans a week before Portland, and then 3 weeks later is MegaCon that everybody's at. So I could definitely understand why there's not a fully loaded bench. And this event actually had a pretty big complication. We got all of these winter storm warnings before it happened. And it was like, we're going to get either an inch or 8 inches of snow. We don't know what. And it's going to be below freezing for 4 days. And so everyone's like, what the fuck is happening? And I didn't know, like, I don't drive a 4-wheel drive vehicle or anything that can handle that kind of thing. And so I was like, man, I don't want to get trapped up there. I'm just going to take the train. I'm going to take Amtrak into town. I'll get some lifts, to and from, and hopefully I'll be okay. And so this is the news broadcast the morning of the con in Portland, Oregon. Check this out. It is full on like windstorm with snow, ice, freezing rain. I turned to my buddy, I was staying with him, and I was like, I'm a fucking idiot. Why am I here? Like, this is outside the con window. This is a view from the train where it's not a ton of snow, but it's like 2-3 inches of solid ice, wow. And so you can't go. And it didn't stop the anti-abortion folks, as you can see, from
nothing stops them
rallying outside. But yeah, it did affect the turnout. Look at this. This is during business hours on Friday.
Oh, wow.
This is insane.
So everyone was late.
There were some late flights, and there were some, as you can see here, cancellations. So that was unfortunate, but I made it. I had a good time. I'm grateful that everybody did their best to show up, but there was an insane amount of backlash. I don't know if you guys follow the event on Instagram, but the comments are insane.
Really?
Everyone is like, fuck you for stealing our money. You should give us refunds or whatever. I'm like, yo, they didn't cancel the event. If the celebrity you paid to meet canceled, you get refunded. But like, the event's still there. Like, we're at it right now while I'm reading your comments. Like I get it. It's difficult. It's a lot of anxiety. They had about 15 cancellations overall. I think there was 8 in the celebrities and almost as many in the comics. So
that's unfortunate.
That's tough. You can't control the weather. It sucks. It sucks when stuff like that happens.
Exactly. And all these people come from across the country to be there for us. They're not just going to pull the plug when everyone's in town, And the forecasts were so like back and forth as to, well, it could be this, it could be really bad, could not, It's like, I don't blame them at all. And I'm glad they kept it going because, as we'll see, I was still able to get a lot done and not a lot of lines.
Well, I was about to say, there's a silver lining in something like that. If you're selfish like we are, I mean, because like you said, it kind of helps with finding the people that you want to see, the guests that you want to see, and it cuts out the lines. So, yes, that's very unfortunate. I mean, Dallas has had some issues as well. No convention is perfect, but they can't control the weather, like you said. At the end of the day, we all want to be safe. We all, want to have a good experience, but you can't demand these people fly across the country and land when, there's a blizzard going on out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure Texas gets hit pretty hard.
Yeah. We get some crazy wind and hailstorms and stuff like that. I know, speaking of, Fan Expo, last year, one of the guests that you met this past weekend, his flight was delayed because of weather like that. And yeah, it was a little inconvenient, but at the end of the day, what can you do? You hope that everybody arrives safely and then have a good time. And it's a 4-day convention. So, plan accordingly.
Yeah. And I mean, realistically, I was only in town for a little over 24 hours. I got to go to the con 2 different days. Wow. I was I walked maybe a few blocks the whole time I was there. I was able to get rides when I didn't feel like it was habitable outside. I had my big Bob the Goon jacket. It's got the furry collar on it. I was warm as shit,
Perfect.
But my ears were exposed because I normally have a hoodie. And so I'm like, oh my God, it feels like they're going to fucking fall off my head. And so I was just getting rides when I could, but it's all right. I want to show you, there were some guests that I was able to meet last year, so I didn't necessarily this year, but you could check out the Tara Strong table here.
She's the first one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I was just like, Tara Strong. Perfect.
Tara was there. Giancarlo from Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Mandalorian, he was there. Rose McGowan was going to be there, and she canceled, but there was still a good amount of folks. Also, the first comic guest I met last year as well at Washington Summer Con, and let me pull him up here. So this is Mitch Gerrits. I met him last year to sign my One Bad Day Riddler book that he did. The first issue of that series. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And he did a Riddler sketch for me. It was like a remark. And
nice.
Let's call it a $1.50 remark, and it wasn't too elaborate, but it was nice. And then I come back this year and they've got the remark option, but they've got a step up. So for $2.50, we're able to get a more detailed sketch. And I just stood here and chatted with him, watched him work for like 20 minutes. I was the first person there. And this was my first Rorschach, trying to branch out. Dunk was talking about, we always get the same Harley and Catwoman and Poison Ivy, before we recorded today, we were talking about that. And so I've been trying to mix it up a little bit. I got a Swamp Thing. I got some Sin City.
Nice.
I got Rorschach.
It's always amazing to me to watch these guys work, and they do it so quickly. And I have
especially at 16 times speed.
Well, yeah. No. He's amazing.
Slow down.
I have to imagine that these artists kind of practice and get into a convention mode, and they practice kind of what they're going to sketch,
Yeah.
I have to assume, I'm not a professional artist, but the amount of commissions that they can draw during a weekend, I have to assume that they say, okay, I'm going to do so many. And Batman is always probably the number one.
Of course.
I'd probably draw Batman with his eyes closed. But you throw him a curveball with a Rorschach, and I'm like, that's what's cool.
Well, he did a Rorschach variant on the Tom King one that this blank is from. And I had seen an eBay Rorschach from Mitch that I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And it was right when I got that Frank Miller commission. And so I was just spent, and I missed out on it. I even saw on the Facebook sketch group, somebody posted on, look what I just got. I'm like, oh damn, you have bid, whatever. So when I saw he was going to be at Fan Expo, I was like, oh man, I'm going to get that Rorschach. So I just had to make this one. And I'm honestly so glad, because then you get kind of the experience of it's made for you, and you talk to him, and you see the process of like, dude, he just whipped out the whiteout pen, dried super fast, and he's drawing right over the top of it. Like, I'll pull up a closer one where you can see the actual detail, but he's got like the raindrops coming off of the brim of the hat and stuff. And it just,
oh, nice.
That is awesome. And he probably appreciates it. Hey, here's somebody that kind of knows a little bit more about my history, my background, and brought me a cool subject to do instead of just a Batman, because he's drawn Batman 45,000 times.
And his Batmans are really good. So
his Batmans are really good.
I was tempted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many people that I was talking to Dunk before you got on today, Gramps, about like, oh man, this guy is really good at this style. And sometimes you got to kind of pick and choose of like, maybe I want a unique character, but I know this person's better at monsters or something.
Right.
Or this person's better at women than male characters or something like that. So you kind of got to play to their strengths,
No, you're exactly right. There's an artist, you probably know him, Jay Lee. He comes to Fan Expo Dallas like every year. And, he has this very specific style that works really well with certain characters. I've gotten 2 commissions from him, and my friend Levi has gotten like 3 or 4 commissions from him, because we really like his style. But you're right. You have to kind of pick a character or an idea that fits to their strength. Otherwise, you're not going to get your money's worth.
And I kind of carried that over from music, because, you do collaborations by just like, hey, throw a verse on this track and this is the subject and whatever, right? And I'd done that in the earlier days a couple times where it's like, oh man, I thought that was going to work out better than it did. Or maybe you got to like, okay, since you're in different states, kind of like you and me right now, you email them back. Well, maybe it'd be better if it was more in this direction or that, because you're not together.
Right.
And what I learned over time is that I might have someone in mind, but I got to just save that in the back of my head until I find the perfect song where it's like, I got a song. Oh man, what would make this one better? And I'm kind of going through my mental notes. I'm like, oh, this dude would destroy this particular song. But it can't just be like, oh man, I just want to do something with you, because then you're not making the most of the collaboration.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So the one piece that I prepaid for was kind of a continuation. So a year and a half ago at Washington Summer Con, I was able to meet Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, VIP event there. And Greg was not sketching.
No.
We got to hang out with them, have dinner, do all this stuff after the con.
Nice.
It was really cool, but could not even get a remark from the guy. And so I remember Dunk went to San Diego Comic-Con, and both you and Bat Force Tom were like, yo, Capullo, he's got these remarks out, and you're sending me pictures of them. And they're like, I won't say, but they're pricey for a really detailed but very small head sketch on a blank cover. And to me, I would rather a less detailed, larger piece if it's on a blank cover, because the whole giant negative space thing throws me off. And so I was like, man, I don't think I can justify that. I wouldn't be happy with it. And so a long time goes by and the announcements come for Fan Expo Portland, and who is on the list but Jonathan Glapion.
Nice.
And I realized when I heard Mandy from Comic Sketch Art say his name that I've been saying it wrong all these years, but it's pronounced Glapion. And his wife Tara said it's actually probably like Glapion or something like that, but we say Glapion. I'm like, all right, cool. Got that now. But the piece that I wanted to get originally from Greg was the Death of the Family, gnarly face ripped off, reattached Joker. Because that is my favorite Joker design. And it's like my favorite panel, period, when he's just like peeking out of the darkness, looking straight at you. You got those fucked up eyes. And I showed him, it's like, yeah, it's the lock screen on my phone. I want this, your Joker, like this kind of style. And what I didn't expect is that as I came back throughout the day, he was recreating that exact panel, basically, of him hidden in the shadow there. I was really, really pleased with this.
And for our listeners, he is the inker for most of Capullo's comics.
Yes. And what I didn't realize is that I even had more pieces that weren't with me, because I was like, oh shit, you inked the Deadly Duo Capullo variants. I didn't realize that. He did We Are Demons. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and Greg's pencils, I mean, they're kind of very detailed, but very loosely detailed. And it takes a true artist's eye to understand, someone that speaks that art language with Greg and is very familiar with his drawing style to know what he's trying to bring out of his pencils. And Glapion is one of the top in the industry.
Yeah. And I think that Evan talked about that when we reviewed Court of Owls and Death of the Family, of like, did you look at the process photos in the back of this book? Like,
yeah,
it is insane that that's what he was able to interpret from these, because you could kind of go a lot of different ways with it. And if you look at his own art, like his own convention sketches and things like that, it's way more stylized. And so it's very interesting to me I would have liked to pick his brain more about the collaboration, but he was actually one of the busier tables. Seemed like more people coming up for signings and stuff.
There was actually, he started with
a piece.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
How much was that?
$200.
Worth it.
That's a steal from a guy like that.
So worth it. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's a guy that, I mean, honestly, he could do his own interiors if he if he wanted to. I think he's that good of an artist. But there's some guys that, they don't want to be, the ones, I guess, kind of co-storytellers and stuff like, the regular interior pencils. And they're more than happy just staying in their lane, doing the inking and working on commissions on the side. And I think that's kind of what he's been doing. And his own original stuff is amazing.
Yeah. He had some of those 150 full color remark covers where, it would be like Batman Spawn or something like that. But he's one of those dudes who does it well, where it's not just like, oh, I'm going to draw in a Sharpie over a busy full color photo. It's like, I'm going to put down a base and then draw over that. So it really pops,
Yeah.
But yeah, he's great. And I was able to get a lot of my New 52 stuff signed. I got the first 3 issues sequentially, as well as Dark Knight's Metal, of course, Death of the Family, because that's what we're talking about. But yeah, so these were all ones that were double signed before that. Now I've got
very cool
him on there. Nice. And it sucks too, because I was looking at, I have more issues from that run, but they switched up inkers at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so I've got these big signed prints. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've got some big signed prints from Snyder and Capullo from that era. And I'd be like, oh shit, no. Because this is from the variant and he didn't do the variant, all that shit. But
so let me ask, because I didn't know that he was doing conventions before. So
yeah, this was my first chance to get to meet him.
Hopefully he does some more, because I've never known for him to really do any conventions. He's so busy, tied up inking comics.
Yeah.
He's been doing more fan expos this year, last year.
Yeah, he's going to be at MegaCon as well. Yeah. So,
nice.
Get in at the table if you can. He was a little bit late because of the weather. I think they had a flight delay, but I paid for it in advance. I hit him up on the website and worked it out with his wife. And she's like, yeah, bring a blank first thing on Friday. So I did. And he worked on it all day between signings. It was the last thing I picked up Friday evening before they closed.
Nice.
And
it's the way to do it.
Yep.
My plan, however, was to get 2 Shazams this weekend. I was going to get Doc Shaner to draw the Mary Marvel from the new champion of Shazam, because I was looking at who was coming. I was like, oh yeah, I like this guy's art. I follow him. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I never did pick that up. And I picked it up and I loved it. And so then I went digging and I found all the issues and I was going to bring them to get signed. And the flight's delayed. We haven't heard from him. Okay, flight's delayed. It's going to be 7 tonight, so he'll be here tomorrow. And then I come the next day, and it's like flight got canceled. So I think the weather just screwed him over too significantly. So I missed that Shazam. And then Dan, is it Panosian? Is that how you say it? Panosian? I don't know how you say his last name. The Urban Barbarian, I believe, is his Instagram. I was hoping to get a Shazam from him. And when he finally showed up, because his was delayed as well, I walk up and he is chatting with Frank Thierry about some kind of comic artist or writer who had, and this is really dark, just forewarning you, that had supposedly raped and murdered someone. They were going through their phones trying to find, who was that? No, that guy, no, he was just a rapist. I'm like, oh, just a rapist. They're like, oh yeah, okay, well, whatever. And so they're like, no, but there was a guy. And so they're like telling this insane story. And he's like, you're covering this for the podcast? Cool. Okay, we're going to find out. And you come back tomorrow and I'll tell you who it is. And you break the story on the podcast or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is a dark turn. Sure. And so, I was like, well, hey, I was the guy who asked you about the Shazam. And he's like, oh, yeah, great. I left my art supplies in my hotel room by mistake. Okay. I was like, well, can I prepay? And I'll just leave the blank here. I'll pick it up for me in the morning. And he's like, no, just come back tomorrow. I'm like, all right. So I come back. I get in a little bit late because of weather. I get in at 10:30 instead of 10. Check the table. He's not there. I go and get some autograph done. Come back. 11. He's not there. Okay, do another lap, do some digging through the bins. And I waited around until noon, but I didn't have anything else I needed to do anymore. And so I left. So yeah, I was not able to get that one. But while I was digging in the bins, found a couple of cool pickups. First of all, blanks.
Nice.
A couple of these I've already had before, but I used them up a long time ago. That Supergirl is new, which pretty stoked as I'm gradually starting to expand.
I've picked that one up as well. I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do?
Speaking of Supergirl, as I'm walking around and some of these guests aren't there that I expected to see, I'm like, okay, well, who else do we got, right? And I came across Jason Metcalf.
Nice.
And I'm flipping through his original art book. I was like, this stuff reminds me so much of Michael Turner. And he's like, oh, yeah, he was definitely a big influence. I'm like, man, that's amazing. I said, you know what? I always carry extra blanks with me. And I was planning, because I'm going to MegaCon, I was planning on asking Silvestri to do like a Michael Turner style, because who better, right? I said, but I think I'd like you to do one. He had full color options starting at $150, and I was like, fuck yeah, dude. And he worked on this kind of throughout the day. I was able to circle back a couple times. It was actually so slow after a while that I came back, and it was like Mustafa Musa and Jonathan Glapion and I think Mitch Gerrits were all just standing at his booth, hanging out, talking, because they like didn't have anything to do. So he's finishing my Supergirl as I go to pick it up, and like literally everyone else that I've been talking to about commissions is just standing there bullshitting. But this is the finished piece. I was pretty happy with that.
Yes, and Jason is an awesome dude. He's been at several Dallas Fan Expos, and I've got some pieces from him. Yeah,
what did you get from him?
Actually, I just got like prints from him, but he had one where it was a Daredevil and Batman standing back to back. And I know you've probably seen the image. Everyone uses it, but he's the one that actually drew it. Yeah, super cool guy.
Yeah, he was really nice. So that was my surprise pickup. There's another artist there that Dunk was talking about earlier today, and that is John Boy Myers. He had a Fan Expo exclusive variant cover of Mad Love, did a reissue of that.
Very cool.
He's wearing a Beastie Boys shirt, and so we were talking about hip hop, and I told him, I was like, oh, you know what? I actually got a rhyme. You're in one of my rhymes on my next record. So I have a track I'm working on called DC versus Marvel, and I said something about got every back issue from Capullo to John Boy. And he's like, oh, that's awesome, man. You got to send it to me when it comes out. So I had a good little chat with him, and then when I did my first lap of the con, came across this exclusive and brought it back to him to get signed.
Nice. He's a cool dude. He tends to be busy. I think when I saw him, I forgot where, but he was drawing on one of those cards, one of those blank cards. He was drawing himself, and but that was a request from someone. So he's like, "Yeah,
that's interesting to get artists to draw themselves and collect those."
Yeah, so he was like, "This is the first time I ever drew myself. Like, I don't even know what to do." And it was like, it was just funny because he was like, "I'm gonna mess myself up."
Yeah,
that is interesting. Like, that's a different collection, I guess.
Well, I know some guys will have a collecting gimmick. Like, there's that guy who only gets famous artists to draw toasters instead of characters.
Oh yeah,
and like there's I've seen some weird ones, and a lot of times if you come up with a quirky request, sometimes it makes them more enthusiastic about it. I'd imagine some people are probably reticent, like, yeah, I don't really, okay, you're funny, you know. But like, I've seen people do more elaborate shit for the less common characters. You know, like we were talking about, everyone's asking Mitch for a Batman, right? So,
well, true story. I had Jay Lee draw my dog, Louis.
Oh, cool.
My French bulldog, because I had him in a Batman suit. And fun fact, Jay Lee is a huge animal supporter. He loves animals, and I just love my little bulldog, and he's my best bud. And I asked Jay if he would do it, and his eyes were just like, "Yes, I want to see this. I want to see it." And so I showed him, the picture, and he was like, "Text that to me, and I'll work on it." So he did it. So you're right. I mean, some of these guys like weird requests. Some of them will just tell you to find someone else to do it.
Shout out to a friend of mine, probably yours too, Tabitha. I think she goes by Gotham Fox Love, I think, on Instagram. And when she had her cat pass away, it was like a couple days before she was going to a con to meet Jim Lee. And she was very excited, but like the whole thing was kind of a downer. And she told me that when she met Jim, she told him, and he drew like a little kitty remark with the signature on her cover. I'm like, man, that's such a sweet thing to do.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances. Not that you guys should go and lie now and be like, yeah, my grandma died. Will you draw my grandma for free? So I want to give the floor to Gramps here for a moment, because I was given a bit of a warning about this next character for this iconic actor, legend of the screen, Peter Weller.
Dr. Weller.
Yeah, see, I was told by you specifically, do not call him Mr. Weller. Do not call him Peter.
No.
Why is that, Gramps?
He's an actual professor of art history. He received his doctorate in, I think it's like Italian Renaissance art history.
Yeah.
And he prefers, he's earned the right to be called Dr. Weller. And he will correct you if you call him anything different.
He corrected the sign, actually.
He did. So the first time I met him was probably about 5 or 6 years ago at a Dallas convention, Fan Expo. And he does this panel, and, everyone's wanting to talk about RoboCop. Everybody's wanting to talk about Star Trek and all the films that he's done. And I felt so bad because, they have the microphone set up for the people to come up and ask a question.
There's probably like 15 people in line, and you get 2 of them to answer to ask a question.
Yeah, he's not a guy that will just answer a question. He will go on a whole lecture and explain, philosophy and his own personal beliefs and all this stuff. This guy asked him about, what did you think about when they had the premiere of RoboCop in London, and it was met with some protest at the time. And he was like, do you know what that movie is about? I mean, full-throated. That movie is about capitalism. I mean, just started going off for about 45 minutes. 45 minutes. And then he got like one question done. And then he was like,
that's a Kevin Smith Q&A right there.
Yeah, he was like, I promised my wife I wouldn't go off on something like this, but...
Okay, so that is the perfect segue, because that happened while I was in line.
Yes.
He's talking to folks who are, maybe 4 people ahead of me. They're at the table. I'm back in line. He looks between these 2 dudes. They're up there together. And he looks between them to the line, and he stands up from his chair. And he's like, what does every great story have in common? I'm like, what? And he's like, what is the movie RoboCop about? Everyone was dead silent. And I just said, corruption. And he's like, no, what is every good story about? Everyone was just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And he said, resurrection. It's resurrection and rebirth and redemption. He's like, it's a story as old as Christ and every good piece of literature since then. And he goes, come on, you guys need to take a literacy course or something. This is embarrassing. And then he sits back down and finishes signing the shit with those guys.
Man, he is a character. Everyone has their Peter Weller story.
Well, when I first got in the line, the handler who was just snaking us around in order, he comes up and he's like, by the way, he's been ranting about 30s, 40s, and 50s music for the past 15 minutes. He goes, so it's going to be a little bit of a wait.
Okay. So last year at the Dallas Fan Expo did this stupid thing where they had VIP bracelets.
Right.
I don't know if they did them there for you, but
yeah, there were people who could skip the line.
Yeah. So, we were all queued up on Friday for Dr. Weller. We had been queued up for probably about an hour. His flight was delayed because of the weather. All right. So, okay, no problem. Yeah. We'll wait. Hour turns into about 2 hours. And usually on Fridays is when I like to get all my autographs done, and then I'll do whatever the rest. But he was the one person I really wanted to meet.
Yeah.
Then they let all these people with their VIPs come in front of us.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This one lady brought a trumpet because Dr. Weller actually is a jazz trumpet player.
I heard that.
He went to college in North Texas, 30 miles north of me. I don't know if he was in the band or something like that. He breaks out this trumpet and gives us about a 15-minute concert.
He's playing?
He's blowing that horn.
Wow. How was he?
He was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell that at one time he was probably really good, but he hadn't
done it in a minute.
It's been a while. Done it in a while.
Sure.
But he was still, he knew, certain songs and all this stuff. It's jazz.
Well, that's cool.
You can mess up and call it jazz and
you can improvise.
But yeah, we were just like, oh my God. Oh my God. So, we're about 2.5 hours in. We've gotten a jazz concert. He's gone off just like you said.
I wonder if the tables next to him, and they're like, Jesus Christ, I can't hear myself talk to these people.
The guy next to us, I think it was Sean Gunn.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. And I mean, they were just moving through that line like cattle call. And, we were sitting there for hours. And
which is honestly, it's cool. I don't want to make it sound like at all disappointed with the experience because
it's unique.
It's really nice that you actually get a personal conversation with the dude. But I just thought it was funny that he's like lecturing the line. And someone even said when I got closer, man, I didn't know we were going to get a lecture from you today. And he's like, a lecture? This isn't a... And I'm like, just... missing the point right over his head. It was great.
So, this next bit that happened, God, I wish I had recorded it on my phone. My friend and I, Levi is a huge RoboCop fan, and he had brought an original movie poster that they had at the theater at the time. What year was that? 1988, 89?
I think, yeah.
During that time, they actually folded those posters into like...
Right.
They weren't nice and pressed like they are now. They actually folded it. So he takes the poster and presents it to him.
Is it folded like just sign this corner type
thing?
It
was folded in half, and the top half showed RoboCop's head.
Right.
And the title across the top. He kind of wanted it by the title. And Dr. Weller looks at it and he goes, stands up, never sign at the head. You never want the signature at the headline. It takes away from the art on the poster. And I mean, just going off again. And it was so funny because Levi very stokely just took the poster and flipped it over so that the base is there. And oh my God.
I need to have a Dr. Peter Weller experience.
I think you do. And I had heard that and I was like, okay, man, how do I handle this? And then, like I said, I got DM'd the other day by a dude who went through the same thing. And I was like, yeah, I've heard that. And I think, there's no reason for me to say his name, either. I'm not the type of person who walks up to somebody and says, hi, Dave, how are you? I'm like, hey, how's it going? And so I was like, either that, or if I'm in a particularly jaunty mood, I might say, hi, Dr. Murphy. Because he's Officer Murphy. He's like, oh, you have to do that. I'm like, no, I really don't. I don't. And so I was trying to think of how can I talk to this dude and not trigger him, right?
Right.
Like, what's something different that I can ask him about that he doesn't talk about all the time that's related to this movie? Like, I was thinking about it, and I just watched the 4K restoration of RoboCop director's cut, as well as a couple other movies from guests that I was about to meet the night before I left. And so I said, hey, have you had a chance to see the 4K restoration? Because it looks amazing. I said I got the director cut and whatever. And he's like, oh, I haven't. He goes, that's Criterion, right? I said, actually, it's Arrow. And he goes, oh, Arrow. And I don't remember the name he said, but he knew the actual guy who, was in charge of overseeing all that stuff for Arrow. And he's like, yeah, he does excellent work. And he was telling me some of the other films that he saw. And he's like, oh, okay, that's good to hear. He's like, I'm going to actually check that out. He goes, the director's cut is better. it's funnier. People say it was too violent, but it actually more lighthearted in the second one because they kept more of the humor intact. I'm like, well, that's cool. And then I get out of the way and let the next guy up there while I wait for my my movie to dry. He turns to me again instead of the guy in front of him, and he's like, you have to watch the RoboDoc. Have you seen RoboDoc, the documentary? And I was like, oh, no, actually, it's on my list. It looks good. And I said, were you in it? Did you, participate? And he said, yeah. He said, once they agreed to my RoboCop price, because I don't talk about that unless there's money involved. But he's like, yeah, it turned out so good. And he's like, you got to check that out. So that was cool to get the actual star of the film to recommend a fan-made documentary about the film. So definitely made me want to check it out.
Very nice. Kudos. Because it's a little bit, I guess, if you know the rules, you'll have a great experience with him. It's almost like the soup Nazi in Seinfeld. Yes. You go to the line, you order, you step aside.
Yeah, pretty much, man. But he was really a nice guy, and he does take the time, to chat with his fans, and I appreciated that. He signed Robo, he signed the date on there. None of that stuff was what I, asked for or anything like that. So pretty cool.
Didn't sign over his head.
Yeah. He did. Wait, go back to that picture.
I just closed it. Hang on a second.
The date is right by his head.
Well, I thought that was funny too because
he signed by the head. He broke his own rule.
I thought he was going to sign at the bottom, and I was like really sweating. Rules. Like, which marker should I give this dude if he's going to sign at the bottom, right? And then I ended up just like letting chance have it. Like whatever happens, and he just grabbed a regular Sharpie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it actually stood out pretty well. I'm sure he signed a bunch of these before, so he knew how to do it. But
yeah, very cool, very cool. That dude, if you ever get a chance to see him again, go to one of his panels. He is...
Dude, I wanted to, and I had to just get out of town while I could,
Sharp as a tack. He can literally list every director and cast member for every movie he's ever done.
That's great. I also, I really liked him on Dexter. He had a guest starring role on a later season of Dexter that was really cool.
He was also... recently and
of course Batman. We didn't talk about him, but he was Dark Knight Returns. And
I asked him a question about that. I asked him if he was familiar with the story, because he was also in RoboCop 2.
Yeah, which Frank co-wrote.
Co-wrote and directed, and so Frank was actually in the movie too.
I thought that second one was Ivan Kershon or whatever his name is from Star Wars that directed that, wasn't it? Kirshner, is that his name?
I think Frank may have co-wrote it.
Kirshner.
Let me look it up.
There's a K involved.
Anyways. So I asked
him derail you.
If he knew the story before he auditioned for the role. And he corrected me. He said, no, I was offered the role. I was like, oh, excuse me.
Whoops.
Which he was pitch perfect as an elder Batman. I really thought he was great in that.
Yeah.
And I had, like, before I left and I was packing my bag, like a week early, I went to my wife and I showed her my Dark Knight Returns DVD and my RoboCop DVD, and I was like, I can't decide. And eventually, I grew up with his RoboCop. You just got to have it.
Yeah.
It's iconic.
Guys were talking in line about like these dangerous kids toys, when we were young, and like, oh yeah, there's all kinds of shit. And I said, dude, my RoboCop toy, you could actually stick the like the cap gun strip in the back of it, a whole roll of it, and you could fire the gun. like the figure could fire the gun. I'm like, that shit was nuts.
Yeah, you're right. Kirshner directed, Miller co-wrote the screenplay.
Okay, yeah, and I think he was more involved in the third one as well.
Yep, I think he actually wrote the third one.
But yeah, such a cool connection, even if they didn't know each other.
But yeah, that's awesome that you get to meet him. It's always fun to see others get lectured by him because,
I'm like it's not happening to me.
I'm like you. I'm like, what can I just say just to keep him level and just hi, thank you, polite smile. I'm
looking forward to meet him.
Well, and like sometimes it's a roll of a die too, because like when I met Giancarlo Esposito, and I always want to say Esposito, but I watched one of the cast members of Better Call Saul. Was like, no, it's Esposito. He's corrected me to my face. I'm like, all right, cool. But I saw him at 2 different cons last year, and when I went to get my autograph, he was loquacious and like just high energy and laughing with everybody, and talking for a while with everybody. And then I get up there, and he just takes like a moment. He's like, hang on 1 second, and he like turns around and he like turns it off for a second. And he checks his phone, and he drinks a water, and he takes a giant breath, and he turns back around, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And I could just tell dude was already kind of wiped out, And so I had a very brief encounter with him when everybody else was like getting the deluxe red carpet treatment. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of like, oh, that's too bad. But at the same time, like, I just respect these guys so much. Especially if you're doing con after con after con, like, man, just all the energy it must take to do that for your fans.
Oh yeah.
So I've got another one to share here, and this is another sound I need to turn off. I'm sorry. But yeah, so cool. The guys from Mallrats were there, Jason Lee and Ethan Suplee, and both very nice guys. Jason was talking with folks a lot about his new business. I got he's opened up a camera shop or something like that down the LA area, and so he was really excited about that. And shout out, by the way, just to Fan Expo. They gave me the press pass this year, and so I was able to. Typically you can't like film and take photos in the celebrity areas and stuff like that. And so, they were like, hey, talk to anybody, show them your credentials, just ask permission, whatever. And so, like Tara's people and Jason and Weller and all these people were very kind and let me, document the lines and the signings a bit. So that was very nice. But I don't know if you guys are big Kevin Smith fans. Are you?
In moderation. I'll just say that.
That was a degree of hesitation that it said a lot with a little.
My silence is usually deafening.
Okay. I'll leave it at that, I guess. But I am. And I was introduced to all of these guys, Jason Lee, Ben Affleck, Kevin Smith, Michael Rooker, all of these guys when Mallrats came on Stars, the cable movie channel back in the 90s, and I was at my buddy's house, and it's actually my friend's house that I was staying with for the con. And yeah, movie blew me away because the opening joke is disgusting and hilarious. And then the intro is a punk song with comic book renderings of everybody. And I was like, oh my God, this is fucking hilarious. It's punk rock, it's comic books, and you're watching it, and like fucking Kevin Smith dresses like Michael Keaton's Batman, use the grappling hook and shit. And then Stan Lee is in the movie. I'm like, oh my God, this movie has everything. This is like it was made just for me. And so I was very excited when I saw these guys on the guest list. If you look over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but he's like, can I sign you, dumb bastard? And I was like, you sure can. Please do. Actually, the first celebrity I ever met at a con was Jason Mewes, who plays Jay. And he signed my Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. And I have yet to meet Kevin. I got to see him live at a screening, and do Q&A thing. But I did a mail-in. I think it was one of the GalaxyCon mail-ins to get him to sign next to Jay. But Yeah, man, these guys, I still think their movies are hilarious. And again,
I haven't watched that in forever. I'm like, I should,
dude,
watch it.
It's so funny, and it's just like again, everything about it that they wrap together is so great. And I even rewatched Chasing Amy because Jason Lee has a pretty big part in that too. And when you were talking about Glapion earlier, I immediately thought of that because the movie opens at like a tiny little, it was like 3rd annual Manhattan Comic-Con, right? In the 90s. And it was just this dumpy little thing. And this guy is arguing with him, calling him a tracer. He's like, he grabs the next guy in line. He's like, okay, settle this for us. If you draw something that's the exact same thing as what someone else drew on top of it and within the parameters of said original art, what would you call that? And he's like, I don't know, tracing. He's like, say you're a fucking tracer. Jason Lee jumps up out of his chair. He grabs the guy. And he's like, I'll trace a chalk line around your dead fucking body, asshole. And so, yeah, I mean, there's shit in those movies that is like strictly for comic fans that I don't know. I don't know how crass your sense of humor is, but mine is quite filthy. So
same. That's why I have to watch it now. Okay. That's my homework assignment for the week.
Yeah. And so Jason was very cool. And Ethan, I was able to catch kind of between people for a minute. And I would just I'd step to the side for a minute, But he was actually willing to talk with me for a few minutes. And so I have a clip to share of Ethan talking about Mallrats because they've been making the sequel to it, Twilight of the Mallrats. And it's been many incarnations and a lot of red tape and legal bullshit. But yeah, I was able to chat with him about it. So here's a short clip of that conversation. I'm so hoping that we do get to see the Mallrats sequel.
Fuck, me too, dude. I hope we get to do it. It's about our kids in the mall.
Okay.
And whatever the mall has become now. Because, malls are different today than they were when we went to malls.
Yeah, they're half
I'm
dead.
older than you, but like Universal didn't even realize that they owned it. And when Kevin went to make the movie, he told them, you own this. I would like to make a sequel.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we're not putting any money up. And he was like, great, just let me make a sequel then. And they said, well, we want all the proceeds. And so nobody's going to give him money to make a movie when Universal. So it's very complicated. But I heard recently that, and I don't know if any of this is true, that they are close to figuring it out.
I really hope that movie gets made. Once they got Clerks 3, and then I've heard Kevin Smith talk about he got the rights back, or he's negotiating it now or something from Harvey Weinstein, who was just hanging on to Dogma and would not let it be seen. And so, yeah, I guess like a from prison deal or something, he was able to finally negotiate to get his fucking movie back. So I'm like, man, after all that, I really hope they get this one. I know it's so stupid. It's like a record label. It's like you make this whole album and they're like, well, we want to shelve it, but we're not going to drop you. I'm like, wait, so
right. Yeah.
I can't put it out anywhere.
I can't promote it. I can't play it.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I hope we get to see it. There's another, one more clip that I have because I just kind of chopped down our conversation and it's a bit noisy on a con floor. But I was able to ask him about one of the other films. I don't know if you guys saw this back in the day, but it was one of the first like heavy, like kind of eye-opening movies when I was probably about 13, 7th grade. And showed me things that I had not come across in the real world. And it's American History X.
Oh, man, that movie. Oof.
Right. It's fucking insane. And it's really a hard watch, but it's an amazing, as Peter Weller would say, a story of redemption and rebirth, and yeah, it just, I think it had a big effect on me when I was young. And so I had to ask him about that as well. So here's another quick clip from Ethan before we wrap up on the Fan Expo experience, as it were. The Mallrats folks were the last guests that I saw at the show, so here it is.
I grew up in LA, and in the late 80s and early 90s, I was super into punk rock and also ska. You could go to like the Sherman Oaks or the Reseda Country Club and like get beat up in the parking lot by Nazi skinheads, you know? And then if you went to a show in Orange County, you were almost guaranteed to see Nazi skinheads. And so when we were making a movie about it, this was exciting because it was like, let's actually talk about this. It does get weird today because it's just like, I don't like that guy. He's a Nazi. And I go like, that's not a Nazi.
Right.
A Nazi is a fucking specific thing.
Well, and what's difficult now is like Chuck D said, you know, can't tell who's in cahoots because the KKK is in three-piece suits.
Right. I was so relieved because the movie I did immediately following that was Remember the Titans, where I got to play the good guy in a movie about racism. You know what I mean? Like, oh, thank God.
So yeah, Ethan Suplee had a good time at the Fan Expo. I ended up, you know, everything was frozen and everyone's freaking out and whatever. And I was like, well, that's pretty much everybody I wanted to see who hasn't canceled, you know. And like I said, I wandered around the comic sketch art booth a little longer, waiting for Dan to do my Shazam, and I never saw him. And so I was like, fuck it, man. Like, I know my train out of town isn't for another like 5-6 hours, but, you know, if weather does get worse, like they're worried about, I don't want to be at the convention center and can't get to the Amtrak station. So I went down there and I saw this massive line. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And apparently the morning train back home to Eugene was delayed and hadn't yet arrived. I'm like, oh shit. So I ran up there, I changed out my ticket, and I got on the earlier train home, and I got back 4 hours early. So
wow, very
yeah,
cool.
it was a really quick in and out trip. You know, I think I got to town at like 10:30 Friday morning. Doors were open at 3:00, and I was gone by 1:30 the next day. So pretty quick in and out, but, you know, a lot of cool interactions.
Got a lot done.
A lot of cool pickups. And, you know, like I was telling Dunk, I'm trying so hard. It's so hard. There's so many opportunities. And you go into an event like this, I'm like, I'm trying not to spend a ton of money because I've been selling all my shit trying to raise money for MegaCon. And there's going to be some incredible creators there. I mean, Jason Fabok, Tony Daniel, Jeff Johns, a lot of like cover artists I've wanted to meet, like Natalie Sanders and Will Jack, you know, Ryan Otley. Fuck, it's insane. Not to mention the celebrity shit. It's like, oh, they got Cameron Monaghan who played the Joker on Gotham. They got fucking cast of Back to the Future. You know, they got guys from the MCU, and it just like, it's insane. And
you're gonna be broke.
Yeah, I was like, I can't do this celebrity shit. You know, like Ewan McGregor was there. I was like, no, I can't. You know, I'm trying to save all my money for these comic artists, and I'm kind of glad that it worked out the way that it did, where the show ended up being a little smaller because my budget was a little smaller, and you know, it just it worked out. It worked out.
So when you go to one of these conventions, because everyone's different, but
I'm very different.
Well, it looks like you want the blank covers. Is that what you normally get?
Yes. Typically, that's what I like to get done. And if you guys check out my Instagram page or on this YouTube channel, also you'll see the video tour of my collection from a couple weeks ago. I went through every piece of art that I had, and I spent weeks taking all the different sized things and photocopying or photographing and photoshopping, and then photocopying them onto blank covers, because I had piles of shit, like thousands of dollars worth of shit that was some of my favorite pieces, and there's no room on the wall. And so I took everything that wasn't on a blank and made it on a blank, and now everything on my wall is the same size. It's a perfect grid. And as I just sold off all of my quarter scale NECA figures, now I can get rid of that big ass display case and hang more over there. But yeah, now I have room for everything because it's not like a weird ass jigsaw puzzle of different size pieces. And so, yeah, I already leaned in that direction, but now I'm really leaning into it.
Okay, cool.
Nice.
I know that Dunk, you pretty much collect blanks as far as your sketches, right?
Yeah, actually, I was looking over my blanks the other day. I'm like, all right, what am I bringing with me to MegaCon, and who am I going to go after? It's expensive.
Yeah, but another thing is I think it looks neat on the wall. Not only do I like the banners, but as we are collectors, right, we're always trying to find new, different blanks that we don't already have. And so when I look at my wall, like right now, I think there's about like close to 30 sketches on the wall, and almost all of them are unique blanks. They're non-repeating. And so
nice.
It also makes it look more unique to that artist, like that one thing you got. Like this one's going to be my one Supergirl blank, right? Or this is my one Swamp Thing or whatever it is. So I do think that's cool as well.
Is there any blanks that you're looking for that you're unable to find?
Oh, always, man. Yeah, I mean, like there's a bright red Suicide Squad blank that's cool. I want to get the new Year One facsimile blank. Want to get the new Batman 89 Echoes blank. I mean,
just let me know.
I just
have
grabbed
a few of
that
them.
one.
You got the Echoes one?
Yeah.
I have a few of each, so I'll bring them over to MegaCon.
Okay. Yeah. I'll buy them off you for sure. I've got a massive stack. I dug through all my boxes, all my short boxes, and I got a massive stack of all the stuff to bring to MegaCon. And it's like, oh my God, how am I going to even fit all this in my hex bag, let alone leave with more, That was even a challenge this weekend, because since I had to take the train, I didn't have my car or anything, or my van. And so I took my hex bag that already had my books loaded into it, but then I had to shove some clean clothes down the sides, cram my little travel toiletries in the front pouch, and
the secondary items.
Yeah, dude, it was really pushing the limit, because when I first packed my bag, I was like, oh, nice, this is a nice lightweight con, this is cool. And then I jammed all that other shit in there. I'm like, oh, this is just unmanageable. So at least when you got a proper hotel and you're there for a few days, it's a lot different, and I can have only the stuff that I need with me that day, so that by Friday or by Saturday, your back is a lot lighter.
Hell yeah. I'm excited for MegaCon. It's 4 days. So you get a lot done in 4 days.
Yeah, I'm going to be there for 3 because my wife's coming with me and she wants to do Universal. So we're going to go and hit hard for 3 days. I don't know how I would even have money for even that long. And then afterward, we're going to do the stuff that she wants to see at Universal, nice. Sunday, Monday, and then fly the fuck home. So yeah, it's going to be a crazy week. And
your feet are going to kill.
Yeah. I'm already anticipating that. And I'm starting a new job tomorrow, which is all on my feet too. It was the first time in like almost 4 years I've had to do that. So yeah, I'm going to be hurting real soon. But
it's just pain.
I've done a lot of things to make some money for this event. So, this job is part of that. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I will get me a Fabok. It's finally happening.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. I hope that if you're tuning in to our first ever video episode, that you enjoyed the format. Drop a comment. Let us know if there's stuff that you want more of. I thought that, integrating as much video as I could, photos, mixing it up, makes it more interesting than just 3 dudes staring at you. But I don't know how much I'll be able to do at MegaCon in terms of video if I'm just a guest, or not a guest, but an attendee. But I will do as much as I can. What's that?
I get press passes. I gotcha.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, we're on the same podcast now, so yeah, hook it up. And then, then we'll both document and we'll come back. So yeah, our next con review will be MegaCon Orlando, and in the meantime, we're going to start working on the beginnings of the 4th season. So it'll take us a little while to accumulate some episodes to share with you guys, but it will be coming soon. Starting with, should we tell them? Should we tell them what we're going to start with?
Why not? Yo, why not?
Okay.
Why not?
Well, we mentioned it early on the show, but Mitch Gerrard's and Tom King's Riddler One Bad Day. So wait, no, fuck, I got the wrong one. We are doing that, but we're starting with a different Riddler book. How common is that? Fuck. No, we're going to do the Paul Dano scripted Stevan Subic Riddler Year One. I sounded so confident that first time.
I was like,
we didn't talk about this.
Wait a second. He flipped it, but I'm not opposed to either. But I thought,
same.
that was a brilliant segue. And then you ruined your own segue.
I tried, yeah. Self-sabotage. It happened. You witnessed it in real time. And unlike the audio podcast, which is heavily edited, you're just going to see it. Yeah. I'm going to feel the awkwardness. And we're going to live with it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
All right. Well, that is our show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to my new co-hosts. If you are listening to the audio version, please give us that 5-star rating and review. And if you are watching on YouTube, drop a comment, like, subscribe, all that bullshit. But really, let us know how you like the new style. And these two assholes that are now part of the Bat Fanatic podcast, give them a little shout out below. So thanks for listening. We will be back with MegaCon Orlando.